I remember the exact moment the air in the conference room changed. It wasn't a threat you could hear. It was the weight of a single piece of paper sliding across the glass table. They called it a promotion. They said I was a rising star, a natural talent, someone who understood the vision of the company. But as I looked at the non-disclosure agreement attached to the back of that contract, I realized the title wasn't a reward, it was a price tag. The 14th floor of this building is made of glass, designed to look like transparency, but it is the most opaque place I have ever been. When I first walked into this lobby 6 months ago, I was dazzled. The marble floors were polished to a mirror shine, reflecting the ambitious faces of people who thought they were changing the world. I was 20 years old, an intern with a sharp blazer and a heart full of expectations. I believed that if I worked harder than everyone else, if I stayed later and listened closer, I would find my place. But the place they had reserved for me wasn't a seat at the table. It was a corner of the architecture of the net. In this urban landscape, the vines aren't made of wood and moss. They are made of email threads, polite HR check-ins, and the silent understanding that some doors remain locked for a reason. For months, I lived within that net. I learned the language of corporate silence. I learned how to read the tension in a hallway when a high-level executive walked by. I learned that professionalism is often just a mask for complicity. The turning point happened on a Tuesday evening. The sun was setting over Baldwin, casting long, orange shadows across the cubicles. I had stayed late to finish a data migration project, the kind of grunt work that interns do to prove their worth. The office was quiet, save for the hum of the HVAC system and the distant sirens of the city. I walked toward the break room to grab a final cup of coffee, and that's when I heard them. The front row executives were in the corner office, the one with the mahogany door that always stayed shut. They weren't talking about spreadsheets or quarterly targets. They were talking about people as if they were line items on a budget. They were discussing a systemic failure in the junior staff's safety protocols, a failure they had known about for years. They were laughing about how easy it was to keep the young ones quiet with a few perks and the promise of a future. I stood in the shadow of the doorway, my breath catching in my throat. They didn't see me. They thought I was just part of the furniture, another invisible cog in their machine. In that moment, the monster was no longer a metaphor. He was a man in a $5,000 suit, leaning back in a leather chair, calculating the cost of a human soul. For the next 90 days, I practiced the performance of normalcy. It was the hardest thing I have ever done. Every morning, I put on my mask. I sat at my desk. I smiled at the monster when he passed by, and I took notes in meetings where I knew every word was a lie. I watched as they wove the web tighter, using corporate jargon to gaslight anyone who dared to ask a question. They thought they had me. They thought a 20-year-old girl would be so blinded by the view from the 14th floor that she would lose sight of the ground beneath her feet. They were waiting for me to break, but they didn't realize I was actually building. I was documenting. I was remembering. And I was waiting for the moment the net would finally snap. The invitation to the 14th floor came this morning. It arrived as a calendar invite. Career progression review. I knew what it really was. They had noticed my silence was becoming too loud. They had noticed that I was no longer the eager intern who nodded at every suggestion. The monster was waiting for me behind his mahogany desk, the city of Baldwin sprawling behind him like a kingdom he believed he owned. He didn't start with threats. That's not how the front row operates. He started with praise. He told me I had extraordinary potential. He told me that the company needed loyal leaders like me. Then, he slid the paper across the glass. It was a promotion to a senior associate role, a jump that usually takes 3 years. The salary was more money than my family had seen in a decade. But there was the NDA. It's just standard procedure, he said, his voice as smooth as the marble in the lobby, to protect our intellectual property. But I knew what property he was protecting. He was protecting the secret I had overheard in that corner office. He was trying to buy my memory. He was trying to turn my resilience into an asset for his balance sheet. I looked at the pen, a heavy, gold-plated thing that felt like a shackle. I looked at the document. If I signed it, I would be safe. I would be successful. I would have the corner desk and the title. But I would also be part of the net. I would be another strand in the web that traps the girls who will come after me. I would be sitting in the front row, watching the next 20-year-old walk into the room, knowing exactly what was about to happen to her. They forgot one thing. They forgot that I didn't come here to climb their ladder. I came here to stand on my own 2 feet. They thought my youth made me vulnerable, but it actually made me dangerous. I have nothing to lose but a lie, and I have everything to gain by telling the truth. I looked the monster in the eyes. I didn't see a king. I saw a frightened man who was terrified of a single voice. I realized that the glass walls of this office weren't there to let us see the world. They were there to make us feel exposed, to make us feel like we were always being watched, always being judged. But today, I was the one doing the watching. I didn't pick up the pen. I pushed the contract back toward him. The sound of the paper sliding on the glass was the loudest thing in the room. "My silence isn't for sale," I said. My voice didn't shake. The 90 days of the performance of Normalcy were over. He didn't shout. He just went cold. He told me I was making a career-ending mistake. He told me I would never work in this town again. He tried to weave one last thread of fear around me. But the net can only hold you if you believe in its power. And I stopped believing a long time ago. I stood up and walked out of that office. I didn't go back to my desk to pack my things. There was nothing there that I wanted to keep. I walked past the cubicles, past the glowing screens, and toward the elevator. As I descended from the 14th floor, I felt the weight lifting. This is my radical exit. I am walking out of the cathedral of glass and into the light of the real world. I am no longer a secret they can keep. I am no longer a rising star in their sky. I am a survivor who found her voice in a place designed to take it away. My name is Elena, and today, the performance ends.